It's another Decades Artist Spotlight tonight, and we are very happy to have singer-songwriter, including frontman for the Babies, for Bad English, and of course, a very successful solo career and writing career, Mr. John Waite's with us. How you doing, John?
Hey, Joe. How you been?
I am doing great. Just got off the road, right?
Yeah, we got back day before yesterday, and I spent yesterday sort of pulling myself together today. It's a bit rough going out on the road, all the flying, but we got a couple of months off, so I'm going to get some R&R, you know.
People don't know this. You actually technically have a top 40 single right now on country radio. What the band's name is Love and Theft, correct? And it's
Love
a song
and Theft, yeah.
song you did a few years ago. If you ever get lonely, right?
Yeah, it's about 2 years old. It came off the last album, Rough and Tumble. We thought it was going to be the single off the record, and made a video for it and everything. And then the record company, Universal, went with a song called Rough and Tumble, the title track. And we had the number one song at Classic Rock with that.
Right.
Because you can't really argue with that. I mean, but we all thought that If You Ever Get Lonely was going to be a big, a sizable kind of hit for me. But they didn't see it. So
how does this sound to you as a country song?
Great. Well, there's very little difference, you know. I think I've been writing those kind of songs since I left Bad English.
You have.
You know? So I think it's the other way around, actually. I think country is sort of like more doing what I'm doing. It's not sort of obviously straight ahead rock.
I see a big resemblance now with the country music that's out nowadays. Comparing it to a lot of music, a lot of the rock music from the 80s.
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, it's first chorus, like most great songs are. But what constitutes a great song, I really don't know. I mean, you know, when you're singing them yourself, it's because you mean it, and if you write them, it's because you have to say it. So that's all I know about songwriting, really. I don't sit down to write hits. I have one, you know. It's just interesting.
You grew up in England, obviously. Everybody knows you were, you know, the Babies. Was it your first band, or what did you have going on before the Babies?
Oh, well, I know. I was in a couple of local bands before I went to London, and I spent about 2 years in London messing around and playing the marquee and playing local clubs and playing festivals in the countryside. And then I quit and went home to Lancaster, you know, my hometown in Lancaster. And then I got an offer to come to America, which I did. Joined a band in Cleveland, and spent about 5 months in Cleveland. And then that blew up, and I went back to London, and the Babies started. So I was a professional musician pretty much all of my life up to getting a record deal.
Did you start early on? I mean, how early were you starting to?
My brother was in a band, and my cousin Michael was in quite a famous traditional jazz band. And he's a great banjo guitar player, and he played me like Big Bill Brunsey and Hank Williams and all the great American writers when I was a kid. So I came up pretty hip in a musical family with country and rock and roll taste. You know, that's basically where I come from, that and the blues. So I stepped into it, you know.
And you know, the Babies hit it big pretty quick. They had, I mean, everybody knows the two big songs, Isn't It Time, Every Time I Think of You. I mean, how was the success factor for that? Did it hit you really?
I thought we deserved it because we didn't know any better.
Right.
You know, I'd spent a lot of time on the road already, probably more than any of the other guys. I was probably the most seasoned, and I'd been abroad to America and played. But when you're that young, you know, you think that if you make a great piece of music, it's going to be a success. So for us, I think it was just like, yeah, of course it's great, you know. Whereas, you know, you can make a great piece of music and it goes absolutely nowhere. You know, rock and roll is loaded with pathos. There's people that went absolutely nowhere that were brilliant. But we caught a wave, and we wrote it for a few years, and it blew up and fell apart, and I went solo. But it was an interesting time to be young and famous and English abroad, you know.
And was it, I mean, I've read stuff on the internet about it. Did the breakup of the Babies, I know it was basically right after John Lennon was killed, and there was a whole big story I've read online. How true is that story with the fan jumping on stage? And
no, I think I jumped off the drum riser and just keeled over. I hit my knee at the wrong angle and just went down like a sack of potatoes. You know, it's just that was it. And I think that was in Cincinnati. And they took me off to hospital, and I'd torn all the cartilage in my knee and give me a pair of crutches and some painkillers, and we just tried to do the next gig in Akron, and I came out on stage and sang on crutches. But I kind of collapsed. The pain was really bad, and we were the band was really not having a great time. It was our last tour, so it was just kind of a dark way to go out. But we went out fighting. I actually left the babies in a wheelchair, which was kind of funny.
And what do you think about them being together again? I mean, in essence, I mean, they have one member, but there's
two members. Don't they have two?
Two members. I'm sorry. Does that? What do you think of the reunion
Well, I think
of the
it's
babies?
good. I think if they want to do it, why not? I mean, I throw a couple of songs in myself. I do like 3 songs. We do Back on My Feet again every time I think you and Head First, you know. But I'm not resting my career on it. You know, when I do it with a smile and a nod to the past. I wouldn't be interested in my career on it and being back in the babies. But, you know, I was the writer, really. I was a singer, and I was the longest-serving member in that band. I was with them for 7 years. So my view is different. You know, I gave it everything I had from the word go, and you know, once is enough for me. But I do wish them the best. I hope they have a success with it. It'd be nice to see them do well.
And you didn't take long to get right back into it. A couple years later, your own solo album out, Ignition Hits. Change is on that album, which was on the Vision Quest soundtrack, obviously, a couple years later. But it didn't really break through in America. It reached the the album hit the Hot 100, but it wasn't really your breakthrough album, obviously. What were you trying to do on that first album?
Well, Chrysalis were difficult. Being on that label was very difficult, and it was a hit on MTV. It was getting played about 8 times a day, but Chrysalis just weren't into it. So you can't really make a record label do something they don't want to do, you know. So I went home to England, and I got married, and I quit. I lived in a small, tiny village in the middle of nowhere in the Lake District. I was quite happy. I'd quit the business, really, for the second time. First with the babies, and then have to change. Then I got a phone call from some lawyers saying they could get me out of my deal, and if I wanted to do it again, they could get me out of my deal. It would cost me a lot of money and basically all my future earnings for a few years, but they could get me out. So I signed it away, and I decided to come back and make another record.
Which was No Breaks.
Yeah.
And that was, that took everything by storm. I mean, I remember I got the album when it came out in '84. I mean, I was only a teenager back then, but, Missing You hit. And that song is one of those songs that, 30 years later almost, it's still...
No, well, I come from that place, like I said, about my cousin Michael showing me like Big Bill Broonzy and Hank Williams. I always tried to write songs that were classic songs, and I wasn't trying to write B-sides. And I think it shows in the work, right through the babies, right through till yesterday, I mean, I've never been really looking for chart success, but it always comes around occasionally, It's quite interesting, but the work is the work. It's what counts more than anything,
And it's interesting you say that, because No Breaks was one of those. There was a lot of albums in the '80s that had 2 or 3 hits on them, but the rest of the album was filler. I mean, the artist obviously didn't intend to be filler, but you'd listen to it, you'd get the 3 hits, and then the other songs, they weren't remembered, they weren't memorable at all. But No Breaks had a lot of good songs on it right from the beginning. Saturday Night, I mean, of course, you had Missing You, Restless Heart. Your other hit on the album, Tears. Love Collision was another one that I liked when I was listening to the album. So, I mean, the album was filled with, like you say, they weren't B-sides. These were all songs.
Well, no, it was. I think there was a thrill of getting away from Chrysalis and feeling like an artist again. And I was producing it myself, which was like, I just knew what I was doing. I was back in New York City. EMI were very good to me. They gave me carte blanche, really. And I made the record I wanted to make.
And what was the success like when Missing You came out?
Well, it was great, because I was in New York City, and 2 years before I'd been there, living on the West Side with no money, and all the neighbors thought it was very cool. And the old ladies with the cats and the dogs in the street, the chemist around the corner and the girl in the diner, they all were thrilled for me, and it was kind of cool because it was New York.
So you became an instant star overnight, basically.
Exactly, yeah. It's funny how that goes. I mean, after maybe 8-9 years of really, really beating my head against the wall, I became number 1. It was the weirdest thing in the world.
And that song, I mean, it's a song that lives on forever. I mean, it was just in that one movie, Warm Bodies.
Yeah.
And it's new to that. I have teenage daughters, and it's odd because, they know that song. They could sing the words to that song 30 years later.
Yeah, well, the song was made up on the spot almost. It's very delicate, even though it was made up off the top of my head. Every time I think of you, I always catch my breath. That's pretty good,
Yeah, you can't top that.
It came out of nowhere, though. I just made that up on the spot. And by the time I hit the chorus, I ain't missing you at all. I didn't intend to put the I in, you know. It just came out like that. And somebody said in an interview the other day that if I'd said I'm missing you instead of I ain't missing you, it wouldn't have had the same effect. It was about denial, which is a subtle twist in the male ego, you know, trying to get by. So I think it struck a chord with a lot of people about trying to live with the unlivable, you know.
Now, No Breaks, it sold a lot of albums. Now, did I read something that it was never certified, even though it sold almost 2 million albums?
Yeah, I don't know what they were. They'd probably got all the money in a big sack somewhere, so I have no idea. But that's EMI, so I really don't know. Chrysalis and EMI are now the same company.
So you never got one of those nice gold records in front of you?
Oh, yeah, I did.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I did, but I didn't get one for being 2 million.
Oh,
so
okay.
I got a gold record.
You got a gold record, though, at least.
Yeah.
I mean,
you know.
And Tears was the other song off there. That was another great, and it was different because it was more of a rock record. You know, you go from Missing You to Tears, which was another great song. Didn't do as well, but it showed both sides of John Waite on that album.
I think that once you come with a song like Missing You, you can't top it.
Yeah, it's hard.
You try to hold it back and come with something first, you know, like Restless Heart or Tears or Saturday Night, anything just to launch the album, establish the album, and then come with Missing You. But it was so big they couldn't stop radio from playing it. We might have sold twice as many albums as we had if we'd have done that. But once the record takes off,
that's it.
It's out of your hands. You know, if people want to hear it and they're ringing up to ask for it and requesting it, the radio station has to play it. And it was like overnight. I mean, there was people who wrote the babies off completely. It were nasty. You know, it was suddenly trying to speak to me and, you know, be my best friend. You know, it was like, we think you're great. I just turned off. You know, it's like, you know, but that's how it happens. You know, people that put you down suddenly think you're great if you have success. But I know how good the song was, and I'll probably till the day I die never write anything bigger. It came at the right time, and it was extremely genuine and so honest. It wasn't really one of those things you sit around trying to write a single. It just popped out, you know. And
it's nice to hear that you don't mind talking about it, because there are a lot of artists who their biggest hit, they not that they don't appreciate it, but they don't want to be known for that song.
Oh no. If Missing You, there's never been one time in my life when I've sung it on stage and didn't mean it. And to write one of those songs that means that much to so many people is a real honor and a beautiful, beautiful thing. I mean, I've had other number one songs, like I'm saying, When I See You Smile,
right,
with Bad English, and Rough and Tumble for my last studio record was number one, even though that's on the classic rock chart. It's not Billboard. It's still a great honor to be number one.
Charts are so different now that it's to get a mainstream hit, there's so many different charts.
Yeah, so I don't even know what to trust anymore. But, you know, if somebody turns around and says you're number one, it means you're number one. It means you've built... I mean, the last time I was number one with Rough and Tumble, we'd beat out Stevie Nicks, AC/DC, a re-released Jimi Hendrix song. I mean, an unbelievable top 10, and we were number one.
Hey,
it's only 2 years ago, and you're going like, Jesus, you know, I don't know why it's number one. It's a very ragged rock song. I didn't expect it. I would have never thought that was number one, and it went straight there. So, you know, that's why I don't really take much care with the music business, because I don't really know what I'm doing. It's all on instinct. And I don't really like talking to business people about music, because it convolutes the thing, you know. But I just follow my instincts to make the music I want to make.
Before we talk a little bit about Bad English, I mean, your next two solo albums, Mask of Smiles and Rover's Return. I mean, Mask of Smiles had a hit single on it. It was a good commercial album. There was, you know, between that and No Breaks, it's what, you know, John Waite fans wanted to hear. But it didn't do nearly as well as No Breaks did. Every Step of the Way was a hit. Was the label trying to telling you?
No,
okay,
I think that honestly, it's a conscious thing where you're that big and you're in people's faces that much for a year. No matter what you follow it up with, is going to be kind of like
a letdown.
Yeah, well, not a yeah, well, they want Missing You again, but they don't really want it again. They want Missing You too, but you can't write a song like that. It would sound hackneyed to do it. There's some great songs on that record. There's one called Just Like Lovers that was really beautiful, you know.
You have a knack for writing good love songs. I mean, that
well,
I can tell
you know, I mean, I was going through a lot of stuff at the time, but yeah, you know, I knew it wasn't going to be a big album, so I just had fun. I just wrote the songs I wanted to make and hung out in the studio and had Johnny Thunders come down for the New York Dolls. He played on it, and I was in New York City. You know, it's just a great time. And the record company promised me a huge advance on handing it in so I could buy a house on its delivery. And I moved just outside New York City to Pound Ridge, bought a mansion, really. So it was a happy time, you know. It was a strange time, but it was a really happy time. But I knew it wasn't going to be a big hit.
And, you know, then when you had Rover's Return, you got to write with some great artists on Rover's Return.
I think I was trying to really have a hit single at that point.
Right.
And I was prepared to kind of go out on a limb and really write with, you know, the big writers. But I think it lost the plot a little bit. But there was some good stuff, though. I mean, there was some really good stuff, and that was a happy record, too. But I went to England to support the record and do some press, and then Germany. And the record was #1 on R&R, which is the Radio and Records chart.
Right.
It was a big deal. And I came back about 3 weeks later, and it was like 78. The record company had changed from EMI America to EMI Manhattan, and I'd got lost in the shuffle. So I lost that record. So it was like, wow, you know, what do I do now? You know.
And that was the first time you worked with Diane Warren, who did some work with you with Bad English, right?
Yeah, she wrote "When I See You Smile."
Right. That's what I thought. So that was your first. And Dan Hartman wrote with you, and the late Dan Hartman,
Yeah,
who passed away.
sometimes. You know, I've always liked working with great writers, and I'm always like, as Keith Richards says, you know, without a sounding board, it's a bit like ridiculous. I can write by myself, and I really enjoy it, but it's very demanding, and it's always great to have somebody play a chord you wouldn't normally go to, because then you don't sing the same melodies over and over again. You know, it kind of pushes you into a different place. So I can do either or, you know.
Now, you said about making a hit. Was it you being hard on yourself, trying to get another hit, or was, as I hear so many times, the record company saying, listen,
no,
we need a hit?
It was time to come up with the goods. I mean, you know, it was like I had a new manager, I had big management, and it was like, we need a hit. You know, you need to get back on the #1 scene. And we wrote Times Are Hard for Lovers with Desmond Child and did a great video. And then the company went kind of sideways. The head of the company left. EMI changed labels. It was a very big deal because EMI were a huge company, but I got lost in the shuffle.
You never let up, too. You got lost there. You're gone for another year or so. You didn't quit again, did you, in that time?
Trudy Green was my management, and we went to see Don Grierson at Epic about getting a solo deal, and Don, bless him, wanted to pick all the songs, and by this time my credibility as a writer was out the window. He thought if I couldn't write a hit, you know, that he was going to find the songs. And I had written hits, it's just that the record company got me. But that's his job, you know, he's an A&R guy. So I didn't want to do that. So I said to Trudy, let's do a band. I'll start a band, and I won't have to, you know, deal so much with this stuff, and we'll just make a record away from the record label, and it'll be great. And that's where Bad English came in.
And Bad English, I mean, it hit like at the perfect time. People lump Bad English in with the, you know, the rock sound of the time, but it hit it, whether it is or not, or whether you feel it is or not, it just hit perfectly, because that kind of music was the rage in 1989.
Well, I think it was a cut above everybody else. I don't think we sounded like anybody
Well,
else.
that's it. You weren't one of those, I like to call them hair bands. I mean,
I had great hair, but it wasn't the point of the band. We were just sort of, for me, it was like a cartoon. When we're doing videos, I dressed up as wildly as possible.
Well, it was a shock to the system, because you think of John Waite on, you know, No Breaks with the short hair, and then all of a sudden Bad English comes out, and you see this guy up there with long red hair. And
yeah, but I mean, you know, the Babies. I had long hair with
right,
the Babies,
I know.
then I cut it short. I just cut it short again about a month ago. And half my fans are saying, why have you cut your hair? And the other half are saying, love the short hair. I mean, if my career rests on how I look, I should just quit.
And, you know, a lot of people's do.
Well, you know, it's never. I love to look sharp and dress sharp, and I like clothes and good boots and all that kind of. Always like to look sharp. I'm British. You know, Bob Dylan, anybody, the Beatles, everybody just likes to dress well. If anybody's dumb enough to judge me on the way I look, then
A lot of places were more concerned about, you know, these guys, how pretty they were on stage, than, you know, half them if they could play the guitar or not.
Well, a lot of bands out there at that point were just kind of like marginal musicians.
Exactly.
And writing pop songs, and they had big followings, and some of them survived it, and a lot of them didn't. I don't know. Everybody from Bad English went on to you know.
Bad English was a supergroup. I mean, is that a good word to say? I mean, you got Neil Schoen, you got Jonathan Cain.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Dean is now in Styx, correct?
No,
Oh, no,
that's
Ricky is in Styx. I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah. You know, that was the idea, was to come out with something larger than life and destroy the opposition. You know, it was pretty thought out.
And yeah, I mean, Forget Me Not, When I See You Smile, hits #1. Price of Love hits the top 10. Possession's another big hit. I mean, we talked a little bit about When I See You Smile before, but people wanted another Missing You, although I think it's a totally different song.
Oh, it is. It couldn't be more different to Missing You if you tried.
Exactly. But it was, again, could you call it a power ballad, I guess, of that time?
Yeah, you could. You could call it a power. It's one of those things that was great for the time,
Right.
and I come out at the end of the show and sing it, just me and the audience, without a band, and it's quite emotional. And it stands up for that. You know, it's a nice thing to exchange with the audience, but it's just a very straightforward song, whereas Missing You has twists and turns, and it's a very well-written, subtle song, where I think When I See You Smile is more pop.
I'd say the song I play the most by Bad English is Forget Me Not. I just love that song.
Yeah, it's a good song.
It's a good
What
rock,
about that?
good rock song.
Yeah.
It's something about it that I always end up playing Forget Me Not over When I See You Smile. I don't know what
Oh,
it is.
I would do that. I wouldn't miss a beat. I definitely would.
It's a great song. So, I mean, Bad English, you're around for a couple years. Then you had the 90s, and, you were putting out a lot of solo stuff. What was going on?
Record, we had a #1 single with How Did I Get By Without You, and Off Temple Bar. That was my first solo. The next album was on Mercury, and they went bust as the record came out. That was a shame, because that was my best record. That was called When You Were
Mine, right?
And then I moved to California, and I made Figure in the Landscape and The Hard Way in Nashville, and then Downtown, where I did the duet with Alison Krauss, and then I made Rough and Tumble, I think. No, I made a live album, and then I made Rough and Tumble about 2.5 years ago, and then I put out Live All Access about 3 months ago. So it's been, it's a different game now. Nobody sells any records.
No.
You go on tour, and that's where you meet the fans and play the music, and there's a big exchange, and you make a living on radio and stuff, but actually selling albums doesn't seem to mean a thing anymore. Nobody sells records, because once it's on the internet, it's just worldwide, you know?
And, a lot of bands aren't even putting out albums. They're just putting out songs.
Yeah, I know. So, but I put out the live album, and it got tremendous reviews, and I got a PR person, and we got big interviews and features in all the British rock magazines, and we're going to tour Europe next year on the back of that. And it was great. Like I said, we had #1 single 2 years ago with Rough and Tumble, and the reception for the live album has been off the hook. So I'm operating on some sort of level that's just fun. I don't necessarily want to be top of the pops, although Love and Theft might give me a #1 single again. You never know what's coming. I mean, I really think it's great they've done the song, but who knows? I haven't got a plan. I'm a musician, and that's what I am first. I'm not in the music business so much as I am a musician, and we'll take care of the business when we get to it.
Now, do you generally? I mean, obviously they have your a country song right now. I mean, taking it off a 2011 album. But do you ever write stuff specifically for another artist?
No, I couldn't do it.
So
I wouldn't know where to begin.
So you have no problem if somebody comes to you and says, we want to cover that song.
Oh, it's great. I mean, Missing You got covered by Rod Stewart and Tina, and I've had a couple of other covers too. But it's always nice to have. I mean, when I did the duet with Alison Krauss
Right.
on Missing You, that was like a big country breakthrough song, and that was before Robert Plant came along. So it's kind of like I've always had an association with country anyway. That's it. That's my story. If Love and Theft go top 10, maybe more people in country will cover my songs. I mean, I honestly don't know. I mean, it's down to the artist to want to do it, So I hope that more people want to do my songs. Yeah.
Now, you're still working on a live record, is that correct?
Yeah, we're trying to get another live album out fairly soon. But we are taking a break for a couple of months because we've been on the road for such a long time, and winter is traditionally quieter. So I thought I'd just, we played a gig in Columbus, Ohio a couple of days ago, and we're going to hang our spurs up for a couple of months, then come back out in the fall.
So when do we?
in the spring.
So when do you expect to finish up that live album, get it all together, and
I have no idea.
taking it day by day, right?
Yeah.
And you have a lot of cool stuff on your website too, johnwaitethesinger.com. Is that your official website?
Yeah, that's out of Holland, but it's worldwide. It's like my site, yeah.
And it's got everything you want to know about John Waite, including a bunch of videos on here. So if anybody wants to check that out, JohnWaiteTheSinger.com. Obviously, I mean, John, you've been in the business now for what, 35 years, 36 years?
Yeah, a very long, all my life, really. Yeah.
And I know you put on a great live performance. Now,
Yeah.
I saw you, it was at the FM Kirby Center in Wilkes-Barre. This is going back, I think, to the Bad English days or your first album, and that was the last time you came locally to this area. I tell everybody you put on a great show, very energetic. You give people their money's worth, and I think that's the most important thing.
Well, we get out there, you meet all these people like eyeball to eyeball, and suddenly you find yourself going for it. I mean, up to about 4 seconds before you walk on stage, it's like where am I? And you walk out on stage and you know who you are. It's a great feeling.
And it's important. People pay money to see. They want to see a good.
Absolutely.
They want to see a good show.
To see me, that's I give the best shot I've got. And if anybody wants to get in touch, they can through Facebook too.
Oh, that's right. Obviously, I'm talking to your website, but obviously you're on Facebook, and I think that's even more popular than websites nowadays.
Yeah, I try to answer as much fan mail as I can, but if you shoot me a quick email, I always try to answer.
Well, we're here on a Decades Artist Spotlight. It's John Waite with us. I mean, he has just done about everything he can in rock and roll music over the last. I think we covered every aspect. Did we miss anything?
Yeah, I think so.
Is there anything else that we should have covered? I think we got everything right down to the live
No,
album.
we've done all the legal stuff. I mean, that's about as good as you can get it, and it was good. I hope I hope you can make a great show out of it.
Absolutely, John. And I play a lot of stuff by you, not only by you, obviously. Bad English. We always get a lot of requests for your stuff, and get that live album out. We wish you the best. John Waite with us on the Decades Artist Spotlight.
Thank you. Hi there, this is John Waite, and you're listening to Decades with my friend Joey Kramer.